The room was filled with balloons, the kind Evelyn had chosen not for me, but for the photographs she wanted to post later. Pink and gold, shiny and hollow, floating above a cake I hadn't even asked for. It was my 76th birthday, though you wouldn't know it from the way my family acted. They weren't there for me. They were there for the performance, the carefully arranged dinner table, the sparkling wine, the chance to show off that they were thoughtful enough to celebrate their old mother. I sat quietly at the end of the long table, wearing the blue cardigan Charles had given me decades ago. My hands rested on my lap, knotted with age but steady. They chattered around me, glasses clinking, voices loud, and every so often they turned to me with a quick smile, a staged hug, a happy birthday for the camera before returning to their own conversations. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. The candles were lit, flickering against my face as Evelyn leaned over me. Her long nails brushed my shoulder lightly, her perfume choking. She bent down as if to kiss my cheek, and instead, she whispered, her lips curling against my ear, "Why don't you die faster, Mom? You're holding us back." The words froze the air in my chest. My stomach clenched, and for a second, I thought I had misheard. But the smirk on her face as she straightened told me I hadn't. I sat there, staring at the candles, my own daughter's venom searing deeper than any flame. She clapped her hands, turning back to the room with a laugh. "Make a wish, Mom," she said sweetly, her voice honey for the others, poison for me. They all cheered, lifted their phones to record, waiting for me to play along. My lips trembled, not from the effort of blowing out the candles, but from the weight of what she had just said. I leaned forward, exhaled, and snuffed the candles in silence. They cheered again, clapping as if my humiliation were part of the show. My grandson laughed. "Guess she'll wish for a few more years." And the table erupted. I forced a smile, let them slice the cake, listened as Evelyn told everyone loudly how tired I seemed, how fragile. But inside, something shifted. It wasn't new pain. No, I'd felt her distance for years, her coldness whenever I called, her sharp tone when I asked for the smallest kindness. But to hear it spoken aloud on the day I was supposed to be celebrated, whispered into my ear like a curse, that was different. That was final. I stared at her across the table as she lifted her wine glass, laughing with her friends, smug in her cruelty. She thought I was fading, thought my time was nearly gone, thought she was already standing in the place I would leave behind. But she didn't know. She didn't know the truth of who had been holding her future all this time. I sat quietly, nodding when needed, pretending to be the fragile old woman she thought I was. But behind my silence, a storm had begun to gather. Evelyn had told me to die faster. Instead, I would show her how long a mother's hands could still hold, and how quickly they could take everything away. The laughter that followed Evelyn's toast still echoed in my ears long after the cake was cut. She fed herself the largest slice, smearing the frosting across her red lipstick, while I sat with the plate in front of me untouched. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. They were too busy clinking glasses and talking about their new plans for vacations, renovations, and careers. Evelyn basked in the attention, leaning against her husband, her voice sharp and polished, filling the room the way she always did. I excused myself quietly after a while, rising from my chair with the kind of stiffness that made my back ache. "Careful, Mom," Evelyn called, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Don't fall down and ruin the photos." The room chuckled softly as though my dignity was their entertainment. I gave no answer. I walked slowly up the stairs, the sound of their voices fading with each step, my hand sliding along the banister Charles had once polished himself. In the guest room where they'd placed me, the decorations were cheap, hastily arranged. No warmth, no sign that it was meant for me. I sat on the edge of the bed, my cardigan clutched around my shoulders, and let the silence sink in. Her words replayed like a record skipping on a broken note. "Why don't you die faster? You're holding us back." I thought of every sacrifice, the years I spent working double shifts after Charles died, the meals I skipped so she could have seconds, the clothes I patched so she wouldn't feel poor at school. I thought of the nights I stayed awake, praying she would be happy, praying she wouldn't inherit the hardness that seemed to creep into her even as a child. And this was what I had raised. Someone who saw me not as a mother, but as dead weight. My hands trembled, but not from weakness. I reached into the side pocket of my suitcase and pulled out the folder I never traveled without. A simple leather file worn at the edges, heavy with the weight of decades. Inside were deeds, trust accounts, letters from Charles's lawyer, and most importantly, the will. The one Evelyn had no idea existed. Charles had been cautious, almost paranoid, about the way the children treated money. He'd said once, "Margaret, people show their true hearts when inheritance is at stake. Protect yourself, even from your own blood." I had listened. Every penny, every piece of property, every asset, he had tucked them into my care, my name. Evelyn had no idea that the house she boasted about to her friends was still mine, that the accounts she thought she would inherit were locked tight until I decided otherwise. I sat there in the dim light of the lamp, thumbing through the papers, my resolve hardening. Evelyn thought my life was holding her back. She thought the moment I died, she would step into an empire of comfort. What she didn't realize was that her future, her husband's dreams, her children's security, all of it rested in my frail old hands. Downstairs, the music grew louder, their laughter rising again. I could almost hear her voice floating upward, mocking me, painting me as fragile, as a burden. But I smiled then, a small, sharp smile, because while she whispered death into my ear, she had no idea how close she was to having her entire future rewritten in a single stroke of my pen. I closed the folder, slid it back into my suitcase, and stood. My legs ached, but they carried me steady as I walked to the mirror. I looked at the woman staring back, lined face, silver hair, eyes dulled by years of cruelty, but behind those eyes was fire, alive and waiting. "Die faster," I whispered to my reflection. "No, Evelyn. You'll be the one watching as everything you counted on crumbles while I'm still here." I switched off the lamp, pulled the covers over myself, and let the house fall quiet around me. The birthday party would be over soon. The humiliation would remain in their minds as a joke, a memory to laugh about later. But for me, it was the start. Evelyn had written the script with her cruelty. Tomorrow, I would begin the final act. The next morning I came down before anyone else, the house still heavy with the stale scent of wine and frosting. I brewed my tea slowly, letting the steam rise and curl around me while I placed the leather folder on the center of the dining table. The same table where Evelyn had whispered her venom into my ear the night before. I sat there in silence, waiting, my hands folded neatly in front of me. It wasn't long before Evelyn appeared. Her robe dragged across the hardwood, her hair knotted from sleep, but her smirk was already forming when she saw me. "Well, look who's up early. Planning to cook breakfast too, or is that too much for you, old woman?" she sneered. I didn't move. I just gestured to the folder. "Sit down." She laughed, tilting her head, but there was something in my tone that made her obey. Slowly, she slid into the chair across from me. Her husband followed soon after, coffee in hand, his brow furrowed when he noticed the papers. I opened the folder and laid the deeds flat on the table. "You said last night I should die faster, Evelyn, that I'm holding you back. But maybe you should have asked yourself what I've been holding." Her eyes flicked across the pages. Deeds, trust accounts, Charles's signed instructions, all in my name. The smirk faltered. What is this?" "Your future," I said softly. "The house you brag about, the savings you thought you'd inherit, the accounts you've already spent in your head, all of it belongs to me. Every piece. And yesterday, with one sentence, you reminded me exactly why your father never trusted you with a dime." She pushed the papers away, her voice rising. "This can't be real. You wouldn't." "I already did," I cut in, my voice sharper now. "I met with the lawyer last month. Every asset is locked down. Every penny you thought was yours is sealed. You wanted me gone so badly? Then understand this. The moment I die, none of it will come to you. Not a cent, not a chair, not even this table." Her husband set his cup down hard, staring at her in disbelief. "You told me this was ours, Evelyn. You said it was guaranteed." Tears welled in her eyes, panic trembling in her voice. "Mom, please, you don't mean this. It was just a joke last night. I didn't—" I stood, gathering the papers back into the folder. My knees ached, but my voice was steady. "A joke? A joke is a candle blown out too fast. A joke is forgetting to wrap a gift. What you said wasn't a joke. It was the truth of your heart, and now you get to live with the truth of mine." I walked to the doorway, pausing to glance back at her crumbling in the chair, her husband glaring at her, the glitter of her robe suddenly nothing more than cheap fabric. "You said I was holding you back. You were right, and I'll keep holding you back until the day I decide otherwise." Her sobs followed me as I stepped into the morning light, the cold air biting but clean against my face. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like the keeper of everything. During my birthday, my daughter whispered, "Why don't you die faster? You're holding us back." She didn't expect that I was the one holding her future in my hands, and now she would never escape it. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.